see how that timer works.
Steel Guys, welcome to the Steel Guys. Here we are, the 18th of March, 2026, episode XYZ. We don't know what episode this is, but it's whatever it is, and whatever season it is. Season 5 or so. We're in about season 5, episode 100. No, it's probably 4 times 3 is 12, so somewhere around 10 for the year. We started up sometime in January. And so if you're online here, we're broadcasting live on YouTube. Give us a little shout out from where you're from in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat in both YouTube and LinkedIn. I do see that the YouTube is live and in color. YZ, we don't know what episode this there is. We are also live and in color on LinkedIn. So, hey, here we are. So with that, let me bring in Scott Glenn, the other Steel Guy, here, and say hello to Scott Glenn. Hello, Scott.
Hello, June. Hello, world. Hello, whoever's out there. Welcome, and looking forward to facilitating a conversation here today about the supply chain of metals.
That's it. We're just here to facilitate. We are not here to offer advice, but you know what? We're just whatever. We've been doing this for a long time, and our focus has been the distribution side, the service centers and the industrial distributors in the supply chain of metals. So we've worked with the mills, getting them approved. We were selling for the mills, and then at the end, distribution, we've worked with the distributors who work with the end users, and in some occasions we've worked with our mills to get approved. So that whole supply chain comes into play when we're selling for a mill. We don't do much with the ores, but, again, the components like nickel, we have to watch that and things like that in the stainless side of things, and try to, keep an eye on those elements, and, of course, tariffs and things that affect freight, international freight, the containers from Asia, Europe, India, all the places that we kind of watch, we kind of go over that stuff. And Scott, why don't you kind of invite a guest to join us here someday?
Well, certainly. We welcome anybody who is interested at any one of the levels that Jim just mentioned there, that has some information they'd like to share to the marketplace at whatever level, to join us. And we'd love to have you come on and join our conversation and talk about something specific that you're an expert in. So, one thing I would like to do is to thank our most recent sponsor that we've currently added to our bag of tricks, if you will, is Atlantic Steel Industries. They're in the midst of right now building a brand new stainless steel welded pipe mill, small diameter mill in the Dominican Republic. And so we thank them for being our sponsor today. And if anybody has any need for any small diameter stainless steel welded pipe, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. But anyway, with that, yeah.
To add to that, we are currently the projection is to start production in July and begin shipping in August. That's the current construction progress. It could be sooner if things make some progress, and it could be a little later. Everybody knows what construction projects are all about. But again, they're putting in 12 mills. It'll be a TIG welded A312 product, welded 304, 316, half through 4 to begin with, right? And
that's correct. Yes, schedule 10 and 40 at this time. Yes.
And the benefits of this particular mill, 2 things. It's the Dominican Republic, where there's no countervailing duties. And it's also very close to the United States proximity-wise, which the shipping time, and so the delivery time from your orders will be cut from whatever it currently is from the Asian or Indian markets or European markets to probably the East Coast. I think it's about 2 weeks, and Gulf Coast is probably 4 weeks, something like that.
Yeah, 2 to 4 weeks, somewhere in there. I mean, that's significantly lower than lead times coming from the other countries you just mentioned. So we're looking forward to that. So if you have any needs or have any questions, please reach out to us.
Yeah, and actually, too, we are starting to look for, because everybody's starting to look for their, the import orders for August. It's small trial orders, at the mill quantity pricing. We'll give you a current mill pricing for a trial order. It's a kind of incentive, and it's 30-day terms, DDP delivered to your. What's that port?
Delivered to the port. Delivered to the port.
Right, and we'll give you prices on 30-day U.S. dollar terms. Get your credit approved. We don't need LCs and all that stuff. Again, if everything works out in the credit approval process. So, trying to make it as easy and uneventful as possible to trial the orders and start long-term relationships with some good distributors out there. We will be selling through distribution. That is our objective. That's something that we at Sunbelt Steel have prided ourselves on for many, many years, working with mills who do support distribution. We realize that you make an investment in our product, and stock it, and thereby we want to support you by not selling your customers. Amen. It has a little bit of overlap there. I don't ever talk about that, but when you talk about a master distributor, that becomes a problem because they don't buy enough to support a full mill, each one. But yet their customers are not the end users, but in a lot of cases they're the other distributors.
Right.
But again, we don't sell non-mill quantities to non-stocking distributors. Well, it'll be a mill quantity, and if you're going to buy a mill quantity, then you're a distributor that can buy a mill quantity. We're fine. But it's not to an end user who's going to buy a project, for example, and buy mill quantities. Still have to be careful on that stuff out there.
Well, we're not going after the end user, as you already stated. So, we are working through distribution. So,
yeah, and that includes the bulk buys by the engineering firms and fabricators and things that are out there that do that kind of work.
Correct.
So I don't know. One of the things we're doing here on the Steel Guys is to facilitate the conversation about current topics in the business. And so we kind of have an agenda we've done a little pre-prep, for a pre-show prep, and looked at the news of the last week to try to make a couple topics. And I think this week there's 3 kind of ongoing / new topics that are out there. And then we'll kind of get into the supply chain and talk about each one of these topics, through the supply chain. But the 3 main topics, I think the aluminum prices have hit a 4-year high, and that's due to the Middle East conflict, disrupting the Gulf supply routes and shipping. That's one of the things. And how does that affect distributors, end users, mills, and things like that? The 232s are still in effect with the 50% tariff on steel and aluminum, and they still remain in full effect with no rollback announced. So that's still part of the whole game plan for the U.S. market anyway. And we do focus on selling in the U.S. market. We probably didn't talk about that originally too, but and I say U.S. market, there are a few big service centers that we will work with that do purchase out of Canada, but they have many branches in the United States. So it's like they might not be U.S. based necessarily, but there's a lot of presence in the U.S. U.S. presence based distributors / service centers. And we not only have the welded pipe, we should probably add too that we do stainless steel products, other stainless steel products as well, and a little bit of carbon flat rolled. So it's not just, if you're interested in what products we do have, our website, steelrep.com, has a list of that and also has a way to, communicate with us, get our email addresses and all that is all on, single page web page, steelrep.com. Take a peek at that. We should be having a little thing for our events as well. There, a sign up page for our events coming soon. So take a look at, if you're watching this on a recorded thing, take a look out for that as well, steelrep.com.
A new and improved website too, right?
New and improved. Call before midnight tonight. You get a special deal. Yeah. We got a deal for you.
More.
Yeah. More. What can we add real quick? Yeah. And the third thing that the news put together for the week was the hot rolled coil prices in the U.S. market have climbed almost to $1,000 a ton. I don't probably seen more than that in some cases, or We just around
Yeah,
$900 and something a ton.
it's over $1,000. Yeah, yeah.
And
Spot market pricing. Yeah,
again, that's because of they say kind of the supply constraints and seasonal demand recovery. So good news on both fronts there, which we'll kind of cover as we go through the end user market at the end. So kind of the thought process here is to go through them from the mines to the mills to the service centers, industrial distributors to the fabricators and engineering firms to the end users that all these people service. The end user is the driving force for all of this. Those are the consumers of the product. So we have, you've got to pay a little bit of attention to that, looking for long-term plays and see what's going on there. So let's kind of start taking with what did we see in the mining this week? Could you catch up on the notes there, Scott? Did you have anything out of those the two items there that iron ore?
no, the only thing that I can, that I kind of picked up on it is a lot of the geopolitical turmoil that's going on in the world right now is affecting, some of the mining elements. And as we've talked about in the past, we don't delve into that portion of the market real deeply, but obviously that's going to, it'll trickle down if that becomes a problem to get material to make steel, that it presents a problem. But I saw that the prices are elevating a little bit on some of the products. I don't remember exactly which ones they were, but
yeah, the iron ore and bauxite operations.
Yeah.
They're the ones facing the pressure from the Middle East shipping risks that are impacting the aluminum feedstock routes. So that's pushing that through. And then the domestic mining too, it's been stable. The output's been stable, but there are apparently some labor shortages that are occurring. So that slows down your production a little bit, your mining operations as well, if you don't have the labor to take it out of the ground, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So then getting into the mills, the mill sector, the U.S. steel mills, Nucor, U.S. Steel, they've reported rising hot rolled coil pricing, output and pricing. So they're putting, I don't know what their capacity. I didn't look at the capacity, U.S. mill capacity. Do you know any? Did you look at that?
It says on there, it's in the range of, I think, like 76%. Yeah, 76%. Yeah. Which I don't know. I would assume that has room to go up. If I remember correctly, I've seen it in the past. I don't remember what it normally.
I don't know what a high is. Yeah, I wonder what the record high is for that capacity. If they've ever.
I don't know.
For some reason, the 70s always seems to be. My memory just keeps that range of the 70s. Yeah,
I was thinking that somewhere in the 80s was like the highest that I've seen, but I don't recall when that was.
Yeah. And throughout the history of our, information, you could probably look that up somewhere and figure that out. But with all the AI models these days, we could probably get a pretty good look at that.
Yeah, but I remember, last week we were talking about that as well, is that import product has kind of ramped backwards a little bit recently, but I think there's a lot of orders that are on the books that will be coming in the up and coming months. So we'll have to see how that plays out in the pricing. Once that stuff starts to flow in here, I don't know what price level it's going to be at, but they obviously have the 50% tariffs on there. So, the domestic mills are going to keep it up as long as they can. I know that lead times have pushed out a little bit, and some of the spot market has been a little bit harder to get spot buys out there. The mills fill up a lot quicker than normal on the contract products. So, as more import products starts to flow in, we'll see how that changes the pricing structure.
So I did a little question of AI here while you were talking there, and it came back. The historical highs for U.S. steel mill capacity and production were reached in the late 60s and early 70s, marking the peak of integrated steelmaking era in the United States. The historical production in 73, the all-time high for combined iron ore and steel production in the U.S. It occurred in 1973 with a total of 229 million metric tons. Record raw steel production in 69, the peak 143, but capacity utilization record. Here we go. The record high for capacity utilization in the iron and steel sector reached, I didn't know you could do this, but 106.8%. So we made more than capacity. I don't know how that worked, but rates above 100 indicate production exceeding the sustainable. Apparently 100% is a sustainable rate. Capacity through overtime and deferred maintenance. You got to defer the maintenance as well. I guess that's there's maintenance is accounted for in that. Oh wow, the all-time record low, December of 82, 38%.
Oh boy.
So we were pretty close.
Not even during COVID was it hit a record low, huh?
So the long-term average, which that's what we were looking at, the 70s, is 79%. That's what I was probably picking for there. And then there's some more stuff that happens through here, but it has been the modern production levels typically fluctuate between 70 and 90 million tons annually, with utilization rates currently hovering in the mid-70s range. So
we're about normal right now, yeah, with a little room to grow, I suppose.
Yeah, you still have to have all your shutdowns and all that stuff, which we haven't seen.
Yeah.
We've seen a couple mills that were shut down completely, just idled for a while too, and that have been brought back since the tariffs. In 2022.
Yeah, I know that Cliffs shut down some of their facilities. I know the Riverdale mill still shut down, which that's interesting because that's one of the things that we've specialized in over the years, the high carbon and alloy. And that was a key mill for that product line. And I know some of those alloy products are a little bit difficult to get right now. Yeah, we're kind of experiencing that with one of our customers. So
let's see what we can take care of there. So the other thing in the mill, the aluminum smelters see a premium, the spikes in the premium from $2,100 to $2,100 a ton. Again, because of the Gulf Coast disruption and the Section 232s. Every time we do these, I've been doing these for a long time, I try to keep the 232s out of the news, but it's every time it just seems to invariably creep in there. Every week we get something to do with the 232s, even though we've been living with it for quite a few. The first Trump administration imposed the 232s. The Biden administration kept it, and Trump's kept it up from there, and even increased it in some cases.
Right.
So,
yeah, I guess that for right now, it seems to be the new normal. I mean, everybody's just proceeding like it's just the new normal. I don't know if it's going to change in the future or not, but time will tell. Time will tell.
There we go. Yes. So the metal service, now moving into the service centers and distributors here, there's been some inventory gains in density and faster lead times, but passed on $200 plus a ton tariff costs. So that's what they're kind of moving around at that level. I guess they have been watching the mills raise their prices, and so they've been doing the same thing at with their current inventories. That's funny. Over the years, we've seen that too. The different strategies that distributors play with that game, the first in, last out, last in, first out, current market pricing, replacement costs, all that, seems to be in a rising market. Some people will try to gain market share by not rising it quite as fast. In a lowering market, you see and again, in a stable market. I don't know that we've ever seen too many markets that are actually stable. There always seems to be an up or down cycle going on, one of the two. It's either one or the other.
Yes.
There never seems to be.
Right.
Yeah. Completely.
There always seems to be some fluctuation for some reason. Yeah, and in the most recent stuff, the geopolitical issues have played a big part in news in the metals industry. It's with the transportation and obviously the Strait of Hormuz right now is a big issue. I don't know what the current resolution is on that right now, but hopefully some things start to flow through there, and a lot of that has to do with oil prices as well. That trickles down to energy costs, as the price of a barrel of oil has shot up to, I think crude oil was at $96 this morning. I think when I looked at it, I think the Brent crude was like at 106 or 108.
It's breaking
So
100.
yeah. So, I mean, it's up there.
In Obama, when we got to 150 at one point somewhere years ago, a long time ago, but that can start putting a crimp
Yeah, I
on
don't know how
economies.
long. I don't know how long it hung at that level, but yeah, that was pretty brutal.
And see how that affects the
I don't.
economy
I
too.
don't anticipate. I don't think it'll stay long. I mean, I think. Yeah, well, I don't want to get into predicting things, but hopefully, it's a short-term situation.
Yeah, that's what the problem we always have in the steel guys. We want to try to keep geopolitical events out of the conversation. However, a lot of geopolitical events do enter into the analysis of what we're talking about here. Just like you talk about supply chain
Sure.
volatility, the trade routes, shipping routes that increase costs. We've seen like having to go around the Cape, adding 2 or 3 weeks and $2,000 a container to the cost of a shipment, and that just happens overnight. Right. One day it says, okay, it's shut down. So all the stuff that's on the water that was coming to you, you put in, that'll be here in 5 weeks or whatever. Whoops, add another 2 and add $2,000.
Yeah, well, another one of the subjects that we were talking about this morning was, time. It seems like, when things like this happen, it's just like, well, we shouldn't do that. Let's just stop doing that and make that change real quick. But it takes time to come to some of these resolutions and things to be implemented and, to fall into place. But I kind of what you said about before is like there never seems to be a stable point. Something's always causing a problem. So I guess we just have to learn to live with it and deal with it, right?
Yeah, and I think learn to live with it and deal with it. On one hand, we read all the news and stuff, but again, what I've learned over the years is even if you read a lot of news and you're very educated on what's going on everywhere, I still don't think that we, as an individual that's sitting outside making these decision makers they have much more information. First of all, we have to understand what their motivations are and what their desires, and what some stronger dollar or weaker dollar, and all the implications of what it takes to make that happen. And then foreign policy decisions. We get them telling us kind of what they want us to hear, but I don't know that we have a lot of government agencies that are working around the clock to gather information, and as they're putting that together, we being me, some of the people that are listening to us might have all the information. I don't know, but it's very difficult to make a decision in a lot of this stuff when you really don't have all the information.
Right.
I don't know where the silos are for Iranian missiles or whatever. So, and I don't even know if they have any. I wouldn't even know if they have any.
Right.
So
you just have to put your trust in what's going on and make the best decisions you can with the information that we have. And as you said, some of that is a little sketchy, or you don't really know the validity of it. I mean, how long is this Iran situation going to take, to get fixed? And to your point is, what does that really mean? What is the intention? What is the goal? Well, obviously, the security of that region is one thing that a lot of people are looking at. And hopefully it ends sooner than later. But, this Iran thing's kind of taken all the headlines, but the Russian-Ukraine situation still exists, and I don't think that's been resolved yet. But yet,
there's a lot of those around the world, right?
Right. And so
But
each one of
again,
them has its different effects.
as a selling point for what we're doing here at the Steel Guys is covering, if we get to people and talking, about these kind of events and these kind of things, and we get the supply chain all here in one spot and communicating back and forth, we might be able to better answer some of these questions that we're, providing. We're mill sales reps selling to distribution. So that's the part of that we're most informed on and have been spending our time in over the years. However, there's other people who've been doing the same thing in logistics. There's some people, in the service center selling to the end users. The end users out there that are building the plants and doing the, forecasting for their capacity and their builds and maintenance schedules and things like that are all out there. So, again, it's great selling point for exactly what we're doing here, because
right
to facilitate this
next,
conversation.
Right, and I think the next portion of the conversation is talking about. I know we talked about service centers, and that goes into the fabricators and engineering firms, and that business. From the information that we were talking about last week, a lot of the projects, it seems that though there is a good backlog of projects that are scheduled throughout 2026 and into 2027, which is positive. So, again, we're not in depth into that marketplace, but that's good news for the market in general.
So we kind of finishing up the service centers there. I think a lot of the talk that we're talking, the inventories, we just kind of talked about the gain in inventory density and faster lead times and the costs. I think that's helping some of the toll processors out there, as the service centers have some of the inventory sitting at the toll processors. And the toll processors do help the fabricators manage the volatility in a flat rolled steel and aluminum markets. So, moving into the fabricators and ENCs, I think two things there. The fabricators, which are facing a little increase in the aluminum, spike in the aluminum costs, they're delaying some automotive stamping and some construction bids, which, that's when you see that. That's always the fear when you see a rising market price there, that some of those bids start to get delayed. Some of the projects start getting delayed because the cost structure was put together for $1 and it's now at $1.20. So they don't want to. It might not be feasible to build a plant or do that maintenance or do that thing at $1.20 as opposed to the $1 that they had budgeted for that. So things are changing. So and one of the other things that has noted for this past week that the ENCs, some of the firms have shifted their purchasing to domestic sourcing for pipe, plate, and structural steel, as to avoid the import delays. So if it's on the ground,
the uncertainty, right? Yeah.
There's a lot of people say this inventory is king, right? Having it's sometimes a good thing.
Right, and it kind of goes along too with what we're talking about. Is these tariffs that were imposed. How's that affecting things? Well, that could be a byproduct of those tariffs. People are buying more domestic product, which was the intention of the tariffs, is to keep things in the United States. So that could be. It takes time for those things to settle in and start to work.
That's what you were talking about earlier today.
That's happening. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and how long is that? Can you resuscitate some of these things that are, they were maybe called dead before, and can we do some life support, on them and actually rebuild some industries, and make it happen and become. That's the next thing is once you get. I think you have to eventually get rid of those tariffs, but can you make your domestic producers viable in that time on the world market? Because I still think you should be able to ship, export the material. But again, there's mentioned the dollar before, the strength of the dollar. That has a lot to do with it as well. If your dollar's too strong, people, you can buy a lot of goods elsewhere, but a lot of people can't afford to buy your goods.
Yeah.
which that's the way it had been for such a long time. And there's people who do like that stronger dollar for other reasons than manufacturing. But manufacturing, if you want to start exporting your product, isn't going to be that's not going to be as viable having a stronger dollar like that.
It's a tough juggling act.
Yes, it is. And then so finishing up here, we'll kind of go over the end user sectors, and we've kind of covered the automotive, construction, and the process industries. Those are the three that have a little bit of information on them, is because of the automotive part, the stamping plants are absorbing the higher aluminum costs, but by doing so, it's slowing down the electric vehicle and chassis production. So that was kind of the automotive. So again, how did that long-term rising cost? Do things start, the cars become more expensive and our production, auto production? I haven't looked at the auto production numbers in a while either, so I don't know if
I haven't either.
Yeah. So in the construction business side, I think the housing starts and metal building projects are seeing a 5 to 10% input inflation from the plate and the HRC rises. So metal building projects are a little more expensive, and so the housing starts. Again, we talked about that last year. I mean, I don't know what kind of metal. I know you got copper, that goes into the wiring. You got nails that, put the studs together. You have all the lumber, but that's not metal. And we talked about nails last
year. You
got
a big one, the HVAC. That's a big
galvanized material.
Construction. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big one, and I know that. Yeah.
Hospitals and clean rooms and all that stuff too, not just housing, but other construction projects,
Yeah, right.
Schools, a lot of school buildings, as our housing goes up, they throw in more schools and things like that as well.
Sure.
Yeah. And finally, the process industries, that piping that's where that piping comes into play in the process industries. And it's the chemical and the engineering fabricators manage derivative tariff impacts on piping and equipment. So again, I don't know, now we're talking about this, like I said before, the tariff impacts, we still have some, the 232s are one thing, they've been in place for a long while, but still we've talked about that downstream tariff impact, for example, on bicycle spokes, before they weren't really, there was a bicycle that was coming in, you didn't have the tariff, but if you place a new tariff on that aluminum, they wanted those derivative products to have, the tariff on them as well. So the accounting that went into that and all that kind of stuff. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think the dust has settled on all of that yet. The Supreme Court ruling on that. It's not very high in the headline news these days, but I don't know where that stands, to be quite honest with you. I haven't seen anything on that in the recent past, but I know it hasn't gone away.
So I know one of the big box firms had said that how are they going to do that? I forget, because you say, if you bought something at Walmart that had that tariff impacted on that, and they get the money back, do they have to go back to everybody that bought that particular product and give them a penny or 2 pennies, 5 pennies, whatever it was? Well, there's no more pennies, but give them a nickel or 2 nickels?
Yeah, that's a great question. Or are they just going to pocket it and move on from there? I just don't see how you could go to the general public and start rebating them on products that they bought. That would be insane. I don't know how that would ever work.
That's just not even the consumer, but again, you go backwards from our supply chain as well. Anything that was impacted that so and so was buying and paid it at that level, and look at us. We've been charging tariffs on. Again, some of our 232s, so they didn't get affected by that. But let's just say Correct. It was the 232s on that as well. What would our distributors who paid that premium? Well, our mills paid the premium. The distributors paid it actually, but they paid it delivered. Well, actually, they didn't. It's because that price. Whatever the market was, they paid $1, and if 75 25 cents of that was tariffs or whatever, the mill paid that 20. They paid 75 cents. Their cost was 75 cents. They paid a 25 cent tariff. The service center paid $1, and that was the market price domestically and import at that point in time. So the mill gets the money back. They just made a 25% profit increase.
Well, yeah, but that's imported product. And I mean, the mills wouldn't necessarily do that. I mean, the distributors are the one that are buying the import product. The mills in this country, they've raised their price. They're not charging a tariff. They're just taking advantage of the fact that the tariff.
They got the profit up front. That's what I'm saying. But the import product that was paying the tariff, they get the money back.
The distributor, mostly the distributor or the larger volume end users. Yeah. When you're talking about 232s, though, but that's a hypothetical situation. It's reality in the tariffs that
other
were
tariffs.
cut.
That's what I'm saying. Just any tariff to take that same thing. If they did it for the 232s, it would be like, what the heck? How do you get that? Because the mill gets the money back, but they're sweet for them.
Well, it's just like you mentioned Walmart. I mean, I think Walmart has filed a suit on that. And there's some large, even like Costco. Costco buys a bunch of stuff from overseas. And so myself, if I go to Costco and I buy products that were brought in from overseas, Costco's not going to give me a rebate on that product that I bought. But if they receive the tariffs that they paid, they're going to reap the benefits, I would assume. I don't see how they'd be able to pass that along to the consumer.
Every grocery store, they probably import a lot of their fruit products and stuff like that too. And they paid tariffs on those products coming in from another country. What? Yeah. And I bought a banana that came from Costa Rica or whatever. They paid the Costa Rican banana producer paid the tariff, but the grocery store that I bought it from, they bought whatever price they bought. They don't know what the tariff was, what the pricing was. Boom. That I get that. Do I get that? Again, no. It goes back to the banana producer.
Yeah.
How they handle it, I don't know.
We'll see.
So anyway, that wraps up our notes here.
We kind of mentioned that in one of our previous podcasts is, well, the lawyers are the ones that are going to benefit from a lot of that. But a whole nother subject.
Speaking of geopolitical,
yeah.
Stay out of those weeds. Yeah. All right. Well, with that wraps up our 18th of March 2026 episode of the Steel Guys. Just to get a hold of us again, steelrep.com is probably the easiest to say to you. Our emails are Jim Glenn or Scott Glenn, all one word with two N's, at steelrep.com if you want to email us. We have our LinkedIn profile. Mine is Jim Glenn, Scott Glenn, president of Sunbelt Steel. He's got that ready to go. So we got our LinkedIn positions. One thing we could ask you to please go to our at the Steel Guys YouTube channel and follow us over there. Subscribe to our channel over there. And if you're on right now looking at a recorded version of this, please, like this. It helps us out a little bit. Subscribe to our channel where you get notifications of the next event. And watch for us on LinkedIn as we post these events weekly. They do pop up, sometimes in your feed, sometimes not. But if you do see it and you register for the event, it'll notify you. And if you're online and in LinkedIn. And we also are trying to have a sign-up sheet where we will email out a reminder of the event, not just for our weekly Steel Guys, but if we do have a guest, as you asked for earlier, Scott, we have a guest speaker or something like that, we can email everybody who's normally interested and invite you to the show. There's no fee. We don't have any fees or anything. It's free service to all. We just hopefully facilitate the conversation and make it useful for you out there. So with that, you have anything to add before we wrap up?
Just to add, just to remind everybody, if there is anybody out there that has an interest in getting on here and having a conversation about a specific aspect of the supply chain of metal, be it from the mill level, the mining level, the transportation, distribution, fabrication, whatever, we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to get you on and talk about it and have some people in the industry ask some questions and educate ourselves, let alone everybody else.
Facilitate that
That's
discussion.
about all I got. Yes,
All
sir.
right.
Well, we appreciate you hopping on. Good to see you.
You too. See you later. Have a good week.
All right.
See you next week,
Take care.
25th at 10
All right.
a.m.